All right, this is Monsterhearts 2, our third series of Mercy Falls, the mainline Mercy Falls story, because now we have a spin-off Monsterhearts Mercy Falls story going on that takes place 30 plus years in the past. Let's just reintroduce the characters really quickly. Fraser, why don't you start with Lilith?
Sure. Lilith is a redhead who was roughly based off of Brave, but became something very different. She's a fae. She was called into the woods, and last we saw her, she had just gotten her jury of fae. She lives with her dad. Their parents are divorced. The mother lives in a nebulous city elsewhere. Super shy and awkward. And I think after the Jury of Fae incident, I'm going to be playing her towards more of the Wild Hunt. So I'm going to try to make her go that direction now.
What does the Wild Hunt do?
The Wild Hunt is when you draw upon your most feral manner, echoing in lithe moments of a cat or a ferocity of a wolf. Add one to your roll to turn someone on. So I'm going to try to play that way after she's sort of had this awakening with her jury. And
yeah, like that. You started kind of demure and shy, and now you're becoming this more fully realized, self-confident person or whatever. So your jury of fae, I remember when they came on screen. I remember you basically had an orgy with them, and that was great. I think the orgy took place between your great fairy mother's legs, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a weird birth thing or something.
Yeah,
very strange.
There was a birth motif.
Yeah, there was a whole motif going. You're right, a whole birth motif happening. But I just want to get a sense of this jury of fae. I want to name some of them for one thing, and then also I want to figure out where they fit in Mercy Falls. Are they new students? Are they just people that you can kind of go into that fae place and talk to so they don't otherwise interact with Mercy Falls? If you want them to be a little bit more tied into Mercy Falls, I think it would be great if there's just a single sort of representative of the group. I kind of don't want to manage a bunch of fae NPCs.
I was thinking about that, and I think from what I recall from the first series, they didn't seem too interested in mortal machinations anyway, right? So I think they might just stay beyond the veil and be a presence for her there that maybe I communicate with when I gaze into the abyss and stuff.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem like they had any interest in the human world at all, and the concept of time even.
Interesting. I think that might change in the sense that Thomas is kind of on the board, right? And you didn't get to interact with Thomas much when you were last playing. But in the second series, Thomas was a major character, and Thomas has designs on the town, on the forest, power that he believes exists there. And in fact, Big Man kind of took the scales off his eyes a little bit, almost taught him some secrets about the forest. If you recall, he taught a math class, right? It was a very interesting math class. So anyway, I think there might be an opportunity to have the classic sort of dueling fae courts business or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That might happen. So your conditions, what conditions do you have right now? We should decide if those still apply.
Awkward and what's wrong with me. Don't think I ever cleared awkward.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, awkward might still be there just because of reasons, but what's wrong with me is probably gone because I feel like you probably have a better understanding of who you are.
So. Yeah, I think that's right.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any questions for Fraser about Lilith? Let's go into. I'm just going in the order of the sheet. Let's go to Margot. Kevin, give us the quick pitch on Margot.
Whole lot of stuff happened in Margot's messed up life in the last season of Mercy Falls. Found out that her father was Shadow Master, whatever the number was. Yeah. Margot got shot. Chad thought she got killed. Her father subsequently killed himself in the bathroom of their trailer because he wigged out when she walked back in the door and pretty much just laid into him verbally. She's kind of become the manifestation or strong armor of the law for whatever lurks in that cave out in the woods, and now have that custom gaze into the abyss move where if I'm looking to expose the lies, I've got pluses when I do that. And then I also, when I did gaze into the abyss, I saw the ninja nun who was sharpening a stake, and it was close to the wrap up of last season, and I let Serena know that the nun was gunning for her, and she had told me that I was next on the list.
You have become almost like the new avatar of whatever's in the woods, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever Big Man was, you kind of have assumed that role a little bit, and I'm going to tee that up for you really nicely when we get started. And you're a werewolf. Awesome. Let's go to Jonah. Philip, tell us about Jonah.
He is a queen. That's his playbook. More importantly to note is that he is kind of the leader of a weird sex cult, has roots in the forest. It was kind of revealed at the end of the first season that he's got this contract with Thomas. He's kind of had a bit of a tumultuous journey as far as his cult goes. He lost someone, and then he got Mr. Thompson, which was pretty useless and awful.
Serena and Margot and Serena's new little gang were kind of forming up on one side, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
The brakes have been put on that for a reason I'm going to talk about, but right. Oh, yeah, and as Kevin points out, you ratted out Margot too. Special Agent Bellefontaine, that Margot was responsible for the killings. So, but we'll talk about some of that stuff in a minute. Finally, Ellen.
Yeah.
Tell us about Ellen a little.
Ellen's a ghost, and she's very, very confused right now. A lot of things have happened. She only knows a few things, and that's that a lot of people need to get out of the way so she can have Thomas to herself. And Jonah's an ass, and he's probably first on the block. If I can do that, I don't know, because he was really rude and shitty to me. And yeah, so she's a ghost.
Yes. I think what's going to be really interesting with Ellen for this series, I think, is continuing to explore her trauma. I think that's like a major part of that character's of the skin and her story so far. And also the Thomas thing, you're right. I'm glad you bring that up. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the recap. So let's talk about what we need to know going into season 3. Series 1 and Series 2 were occupied, consumed by murders, right? Kyle Norwood's disappearance, subsequent murders Mr. Thompson was arrested for, still arrested for. There was evidence, the forest or something or whatever tried to pin it on Serena by making it look like a vampire thing. But we think that maybe that it only wanted certain people to see that, right? Just to create some conflict. Big Man is there, and he's almost like a sort of like looking out for the interests of the woods, right? And finds it offensive, like all the strange supernatural creatures, as well as like the locals' treatment of the woods, right? And he believes fundamentally that the town is a town of lies, right? Special Agent Edward Bellefontaine swoops in because he doesn't buy the story about Mr. Thompson, so he begins his interviews and investigation in the town. Thomas is on scene and causing chaos in his way, right? Being very manipulative, but also very petty, petulant, right? And kind of sort of like ego-driven and selfish. The town is consumed by this stuff, and it's taking place in a matter of days. We're at this really, really like heightened point. But then Sister Mary Edward Price arrived, and she will have a different effect on the town. And that's how we're going to kind of kick off the series, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But before we do, I want to clear up just a couple of mechanical things. So, Jonah, you have the infernal dark power stuff going on, right? As part of the moves you've taken. You have the soul debt, right? I want to clarify this to some degree because it feels like a weird tension that he is both a member of your clique, but also your dark power. I'm okay with that weird tension, but I think it may lead to like strange results in the fiction. If you have like all this like mechanical control over him via him being in your clique, but then he also has all this like weird control over you because he's your dark power. It feels like a strange relationship, and I want to make sure it's like the most satisfying thing we can do here.
Honestly, I feel like Jonah probably doesn't like Thomas, so
we can totally move in a different direction. Not being in the clique, or what?
Yeah, that's fine.
Still your dark power, or do you want to change
for
that?
now? I guess one thing that kind of I feel like changes with the dark power is that once they start coming more into the action, it gets kind of complicated. My main playbook is the Queen, so I think I'm going to lean harder into that.
Okay.
And maybe not too much onto the soul debt stuff.
What do you think about this? I think there's like some space to like basically withdraw Thomas a little bit from the melee, as it were, right? He's still a student in school, and Ellen still clearly has designs on him. And I think he's still scheming for his fake court. I think that's all still happening. We can kind of promote him to big bad status, right? And not have him be like so on your guy's level.
Yeah, that's kind of always been my impression, was that he was just kind of faking it on our level just for like shits and giggles, but he's really like a much more powerful force.
I can do that. We can kind of change his function narratively pretty easily and still maintain like Ellen's obsession and your thrall, right? Like we can still maintain all that stuff and still keep him in there, but not like out there in the middle of the woods during your Mexican standoff with Serena, right? Like, like we can make him not be there during those moments. Ellen, how do you feel about that? Like Thomas being this more like ominous or exalted or secretive figure in the fiction.
Yeah, I like that. I think that makes it a little more challenging. Certainly for me, Ellen's a person, and the struggle she has is that she's completely subject to other people's whims.
Right.
And so it makes sense that Thomas is this power, like everything else that's battering her around.
Like last time, it almost felt like Ellen was the one who had Thomas as her dark power, right? Like it almost felt like that. I can make that work for Jonah too, but I do think we need to kind of withdraw him just a little bit from our sort of like close fiction. We should talk about your conditions, though. Take a look at your conditions and see what you think does or does not apply anymore. If you don't think something applies anymore, just clear it. Awesome. It's mid-December, roughly 2 months after all the events that we've been seeing. 2 months ago, Mercy Falls was consumed by missing children, murders, a bad apple teacher, an FBI investigation. The town was in a tizzy, on fire. People were looking over their shoulders. People were freaking out. It was all bad. The town was on the precipice and ready to fall over the side. This is not the first time Mercy Falls has experienced this kind of chaos and upheaval and trauma. In fact, it happens a lot. And yet, the town always goes back to normal. It always goes back to an even state. The old-timers call these little flare-ups the woods being fussy. Things always go back to normal. And Sister Mary Edward Price was brought in after these events to offer grief counseling services to the children of Mercy Falls. And she did a really good job. Through a series of counseling sessions, interviews, home life check-ins, Sister Mary Edward Price has smoothed everything over. And in the community too, Sister Mary Edward Price is there with baked goods at whatever community function is going on. She's there. Oh, you're having a little bit of trouble in your marriage, I heard. I happen to be in the neighborhood. Dawn's parents haven't talked about Dawn in weeks. Kyle Norwood's parents haven't talked about Kyle in weeks. Almost no one talks about Margot's dad. It's all just cool and easy. And people love her. And yet, Margot, there's trouble. You believe that she intended to kill Serena, and then you. Serena has been missing this entire time. It has gone totally unremarked by the school administration, by anyone. It's almost like she was never there. Thomas withdrew from class, and he now just lives in a great big house on a hill behind an iron gate, and he's been little seen. Sister Mary Edward Price is a force to be reckoned with, but it's a force of calm and soothing validation and reassurance. And the only thing on anyone's mind right now is the Yule Ball, which is coming up in just a couple days. The Yule Ball. So that's where we find ourselves. Even if the town at large and the school at large doesn't care about this stuff anymore, you all remember it. You all remember what was going on. And I don't think any of you have sat down with Sister Mary Edward Price, which is maybe why you're still obsessed with these things. I'd like to just go around the table and find out how you've been feeling the last couple of months, knowing what you know, shootings in the woods, bodies, murder, the FBI, clean slate. Whoever wants to jump in.
I figure that Ellen's thing is about burying memories and forgetting these things. Serena's gone, but she kind of knows that there's something there. She's got that kind of low-level anxiety trauma, the kind of thing that you would prescribe meds for if she weren't dead. And that's just keeping her on edge, trying to fit in with this classroom of popular kids and it just not working, and being resentful when new kids come in and they're super popular and she's still not. And of course, she'll put her stakes on anything that's out of her reach. That's where she's at still. Why can't she be there?
Yeah. A follow-up. How do you feel about the fact that Thomas, who you were, despite that weirdness, like you thought like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. This is a thing that I have in my life. This is a thing I can pursue, right? How do you feel about the fact that he's like withdrawn? He's still in town, but like people don't see him very often. He's just withdrawn into this mansion. What have you done in the intervening weeks?
I imagine that she's tried to do the clamber over the fence at night. That's her specialty, but can't. Like there's something about the gates that keeps her from going over. And she's every once in a while she scuttles around the edges, running the fence line. Probably every couple of weeks she may wake up there, or she may wake up with the evidence of having done that. In her sort of head, she's not thinking about that, but when she sleeps, it comes back to her.
That's good. Thank you. I would also like to add that these intervening weeks, these nearly 2 months, your parents have been as nice to you as they have ever been. I mean, they're showing an interest in the things you're doing. They are showing an interest in each other. It's like genuinely good in your house, right now. And that's an unusual circumstance for Ellen.
And yet I know that there's a point at which the hammer is going to come down on my skull. Not explicitly, but I know that.
Waiting for
I
that
know
shoe
that
to
this
drop.
can't last. I can't trust this.
Yeah. Jonah, what about you?
I think it's been kind of crazy because in this time of like peace, Jonah has kind of become like a bit more of a rebel. So he's like started going around with Tony and like doing graffiti.
But that almost has like a normalness to it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like every town has a misfit, right? Who does graffiti.
Totally.
Has she separated us in classes too? Like, is there a sense that she's trying to isolate us?
Yeah,
or
probably.
anything?
There might be like little hints of that, right? Like, oh, we had we had to change everyone's schedule up a little bit. Now this teacher will be teaching this class when we're going to need you guys to go over here. Yeah, I'm sure stuff like that is going on too. I do like the idea of you like kind of like devolving almost to just like typical thug behavior as opposed to like ritualistic thug behavior, right? Like,
right.
You're like a normal bad kid now,
I think that as far as like my home life goes, she hasn't been around, but obviously I don't have like a real room at home and stuff. So maybe it's like cause for concern or something. I don't know.
I was even going to ask, like, if your parents got counseling, are they all like, we prepared a room for you. You have a real room now. And then,
yeah, I kind of like that idea, actually. Like maybe Sister Mary Edwards been checking in on your folks because she's been checking in on a lot of people. And maybe they're like, maybe your parents are treating you better now. Your mom is trying to reach you, right? She's no longer throwing Ben in your face, right? Everyone's parents are trying to be better.
She like emptied out the craft room and like put in a bed and there's all this nice stuff in there.
Right, yeah.
And
yeah.
I went out and got like some like satanic heavy metal posters and put them up on the walls. And I don't even sleep there most nights. I'm just gone a lot. So she went through all this trouble and I'm just like, fuck it.
Right. But see, that feels like normal to me. That feels like the way it should be, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's good. Margot. A lot to unpack with Margot. So how do you feel about these developments, Margot?
Well, now it's completely obvious that this entire town is complicit in one big lie of just, if nothing else, refusing to look at what's happened. And it feels like maybe that this Sister Mary Edward Price is facilitating this group lie. So I probably feel really threatened by her. Plus, I'm definitely scared. And it's that whole shoe waiting to drop thing, because I had that vision. She's sharpening the stake, saying, I'm coming for your little vampire friend first, and then you. Well, my vampire friend has been missing for 2 months. I presume I tried calling her place, and it's just like, oh, everything's fine. And couldn't get any answers about where Serena is or isn't, right?
I'd like to suggest that her parents aren't around either. Like, I think they're just
Oh,
their
they're
house is
gone
just like
too.
their house is just
Okay.
locked up, and nobody knows where they're at, and no one seems to care. That's important too. Like, no one seems to care where they're at.
Did Sister Mary Edward Price come and offer counseling to my mother after my father shot himself?
I think that would be really interesting. And I think that, like, kind of a piece with what we've been talking about, I think your mom I think she's like moved past her stuff with your dad, right? Like, it's still sad. We mourn him, but,
Right, but she's not debilitated by grief
Right,
or anything, and maybe even seemed to move through it too fast for me. And even though I kind of hated my dad, there's definitely a sense of still lost something, because at one point we did have a good relationship. It was just a long time ago. And
Right.
now I know there's no chance I'll ever have that again. Just a couple little side things. Margot's gotten a tattoo, because when we last left, she was looking at tattoos on her inner forearm.
Tentacle tattoos, right?
Yeah, it's a infinity symbol with a tentacle. She also picked up a secondhand leather biker jacket that says Hounds of the Moon, and she's wearing that all the time now that it's gotten cooler out.
Nice, yeah. I just found that one hanging up in a secondhand shop. Huh?
Yeah, what luck.
I know,
That spoke to her. It's real beaten up.
I love it. Lilith, what about you?
I like the idea of my dad acting all weird too, right? Because when we first established him, he was sort of, I stay with my dad and he lets me do whatever I want and doesn't care that much. And he's sort of seemed like not like a deadbeat, but like disinterested and disassociated. And now he's sort of like, I like the idea that he has like this invasion of the body stature thing, right? Where he's got this like 180 personality where he's super interested in me and like being an actual parent. And it's disconcerting and weird, but good.
He wasn't nearly as like derelict as Marco's dad. He was just kind of oblivious and selfish, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
He was like the hot shit in high school, and then to learn any skills or get his own like profession or anything, and so he just depended on your mom, right? Like, yeah. And your mom, I think, was not a popular girl in high school, so he just married her because she was a go-getter and she was bringing in the bacon. So
yeah, and then she had enough and was out.
And we never really established like why you got stuck with him. But
I think Lilith chose him because of the fact that he let her do whatever she wanted. So she was sort of like not a spoiled kid, but liked the freedom that afforded, where I think her mother had like a much firmer hand. And also just the way that I thought of her before was sort of like high-powered and corporate. Maybe didn't even have time for a kid anyway in the city, right? Like,
oh, got it. Yeah.
I would be like a kid in New York going to school with a mom who was never present or something like that if I chose that life.
Yeah. I want to find out like how you each feel about Serena being missing.
I think that Lilith is really upset about it, and even more upset that she probably can't even really talk to the other people about it, right? Because they don't even like Serena. There was probably a point in the last few weeks where she would like idly bring Serena up in conversation to like test the waters, and people would be like, cares, she was mean or whatever. So Lilith maybe is trying to do her own investigation, but it's coming up pretty short. I think it's not something that she's moved on from, and she dwells on each day.
Ellen, Serena was your rival.
She's super confused because she wanted to be Serena, but then Serena was in the way. And, but she was at least somebody who talked to her and kind of brought her in. But then, Serena's gone, so there's a gap. Maybe I get to know somebody else filled that gap for being cool and popular, and no closure whatsoever.
Well, and then also just as she slid out of your life, slid out of the way vis-a-vis Thomas removed himself from the equation, right? Like, just as so it's like you can't have anything.
Can't finish anything.
Yeah. What about you, Jonah? You and Serena have some bad blood, right?
I'm glad she's gone. Good riddance.
Good riddance.
Tony is just like really tight with me now. So
So that's true. Like she had that kind of control over Tony, and now that's just gone.
yeah, he's all about the graffiti art. That's his
You're
artistic
rechanneling his
expression.
artistic expression. That's good. I'm here for it. That's good. Oh, that's a good question, Kevin, in the chat. Does your gang have a specific tag?
Totally like the stag skull with the antlers.
Okay, nice.
They're like spraying that everywhere, and Tony does like some more artistic motifs and figures and whatnot as well, and like addition to it. But that's always like a very prominent sign within all of the graffiti.
Does that mean you'd get in trouble if they found your mask?
Probably. I like that.
Right.
That's good.
We'll just kick off with homeroom. Mrs. Forsyth, the vice principal, is still conducting homeroom for Mr. Thompson. I think they've just decided for the rest of the semester they're not going to try to sort that out. It's just going to be the vice principal. We haven't seen Mrs. Forsyth much yet, but she does seem to always kind of be there whenever there's like an issue. Something needs to be told to the students. It's always her more than the main principal, right? And that's not unusual. She's, the vice principal's like the second in command on a ship or something. They're the ones who actually do the stuff, right? While the principal gets all the credit, right? He is no doubt a man. And Sister Mary Edward Price, she also was the one who was like, hey, like here's Sister Mary Edward Price and all that stuff. And they're real tight. That's something you'll note. Everybody will be very aware of that in the school. Like Sister Mary Edward Price and Vice Principal Forsyth are basically synonymous in terms of like their aims and goals, and they're always chit-chatting, and they're clearly friends. But I think we're going to start with homeroom, and what everyone's buzzing about in homeroom is who are you taking to Yule Ball? Yule Ball is the Christmas dance. We'll even say it's like tomorrow night. Who are you taking to Yule Ball? Like, has anyone asked you? All that kind of stuff, right? So you guys can just enter the scene as you wish, but I'm going to start off with people kind of milling around before homeroom starts. And Sarah, who has seemed to have completely forgotten about the attack that she suffered. She never realized it was an attack, but she's forgotten about that whole incident, right? Like where she had her collapse in class, right? Sarah comes up to you, Lilith, and she says, hey, so has anyone asked you out to Yule Ball yet?
No, but I've been not really present at school anyway, so I didn't expect anyone to swing. And I think like visually how the audience or whatever would know that Lilith is sort of a different person. Like before she was always wearing sweaters and sort of sweeping wispy clothes and stuff, and now she's more like dressing like an actual teenager. She cares about her appearance more, has enough confidence that when people are talking to her, especially guys that she's not interested in, then it's not a huge deal and she's not falling all over herself. So maybe even people have asked her, but she just hasn't really noticed because she's still dwelling in, the sadness that is Serena missing. As the school keeps piping Christmas music in her own inner soundtrack, it's like A Long December or something from Counting Crows, right? But Lilith is like, how about you? I'm sure everyone's asked you, and kind of rolls her eyes.
She's like, yeah, some people have asked, but I don't know. I kind of just, I don't know. I kind of just want to go like, with just friends, I'm maybe just like go with a couple of girlfriends, and I don't know, like none of the guys at the school are just kind of,
Lilith looks at Chad and she's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think she does her trademark little punch on the shoulder, and she's like, we should show them and just go together.
She's like, yeah, we should. Yeah, we could do that. Are you suggesting like as a platonic thing, a friendly thing? Or are you trying to like turn her on or get her to like?
I think it's a turn on thing. And like, I think in her mind anyway, this is like super edgy and might even like mess with Forsyth, right? Like, ooh, two girls showing up.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, when probably nobody really would care. But
but you, and I like the way you approached it was you did your awkward like arm punch thing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Any contact is good contact.
Go a little harder on like the turn her on. Like what might you do to?
Another thing how we see she's different is she does her trademark move, but then her hand actually stays on the shoulder when she asks and makes like direct eye contact instead of it being like super awkward, averting gaze and stuff. There's more confidence in Lilith now.
All right, roll hot.
5, 6. Nope.
Hold that thought. I'll come back to it. Who else wants to enter the scene? You can just frame it up, doing whatever you want to do.
I'll come drifting in and hear the talk about going to the Yule Ball, and I'll just kind of, as I'm drifting by Lilith and Sarah, I'll be like, why do you guys even care about the damn thing? It's just an excuse to get together and hook up with someone and maybe, you know, have some dope or drink. It's not like these are lifetime relationships. And I'm just going to kind of stomp past them and sit down at my desk, and then I'll probably lean over towards Roddy and
I have a thought on my move now. Like swing back to it, and then I'll give Ellen. I think you're there. I want to say you're there in the scene, even, but you haven't maybe done anything yet.
Yeah, people haven't noticed me though.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Lilith, some young guy, not a student, like an older guy, but still young, comes in. He's got like this bouquet of flowers. It's a bouquet of like dark purple flowers, even like black flowers, like some black roses, this really gothy looking like bouquet. And he says, is there someone named Lilith here? And everybody in the class is like, ooh.
Yeah. Valentine's Day all over again.
Ooh, right.
Almost shrinks back into her old self and does the like present.
And he sets it down, and there's a card.
She tentatively, and she definitely reads it so that like Sarah's probably like darting around trying to see it too, and
Right,
she's just like blocking it and trying
What
to read
about
it.
you, Ellen? Are you trying to dart around and see what the card says?
More that I'm standing there just because so that I'll be in the shot with the three of them. You know, not saying
Ellen.
anything, just
Right.
cool by association because now these flowers and people are looking at it.
Good. You open up the envelope, and it has this very rich, herbaceous smell, like tomato leaf and nightshade. The hint of bitterness. It's a smell that you're not particularly familiar with, Lilith, but you recognize it immediately, Ellen. And the card, Dr. Like, you know, I hope these flowers are finding you well, da 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 da. Would you mind being my date for the Yule Ball? And it's signed, Thomas. Hello, listeners. We hope you're enjoying Monsterhearts, Memories of Mercy Falls. As it turns out, there are a number of costs associated with producing pocket-sized play, including various hosting fees, online services like Dropbox, and editing. You can help defray those costs by supporting the Gauntlet on Patreon. A $2 pledge goes a long way toward keeping the lights on at Pocket Size Play, and you won't just be supporting the show, you'll also get exclusive early access to each new Pocket Size Play series in its entirety that we produce. So head over to patreon.com/gauntlet and support this show today. Thanks.